Well, folks, the new mini set has finally been revealed. It is called Day of Rebirth. It lands on September 2nd, and I know many of you are hoping that it will be a big shakeup for the Hearthstone meta. A Day of Rebirth for the Hearthstone meta. I don't know. Based on today's reveals, I'm not quite so convinced. We've actually got a few legendaries to take a look at in this video, a handful of other cards. Nothing here to me screams that it's gonna like shake up the meta, which you know, we got more cards to see soon. Hopefully there are some big plays, some big surprises possible there, but currently I wouldn't get my hopes up. But let's go ahead and talk about all these cards in a little more detail. This is the Egg of Kaos, for instance. It is a new neutral legendary, 3 mana, 0/3, death rattle, summon a slightly cracked egg, and then break 5 times to hatch into a 20/20 beast. So basically there's the first egg, and then you've got 4 more eggs that are all 0/3s. After you have deleted all 5 of those eggs, you then get a 20/20 with no other text. He's just a big dumb 20/20, which there's something really fun about this idea. You know, like I just love like big giant dudes. There's kind of a little quest aspect to this, a little chase you have to complete to get this 20/20. The problem is it's just a big dumb 20/20, you know. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of pieces. You're gonna have to really try to support this a lot. And your reward is a 20/20 that just sits there, and it probably honestly gets like frozen out. It just gets removed with some insanely cheap, you know, hard removal spell. It's gonna be quite easy very often for a variety of decks to remove this for like 2 to 4 mana. So many like assassinate effects for 4 mana. Like even if they're not being played now, as soon as this became a card that was regularly seen, they would be, and it would just immediately be shut down. You'd put in all these steps, all this work, and your dude will just die or get locked out, or you'll already be dead because the opponent has already summoned 2 8/8 giants or whatever. They're just smacking you in the face, or it's just like running into giant starships and dying anyway because the starships are so freaking big, right? It's just that like it's never coming down soon enough to be as impactful as you need it to, because you've got 5 steps for Egg of Kaos. So like an average deck is probably going to take 5 or more turns to complete that, because you know it's going to be hard very often to complete multiple steps in a single turn, or at least via a single card. It's certainly possible, you know, I played 2 Hellfires and you know in a single turn, and that finished off my Egg of Kaos, right? There's ways to do it, but it's work. I was thinking about like super fast ways to do this. Maybe something like Corpse Explosion in Death Knight is possible. But you know, you still got to push through 15 health. It is true that the eggs will feed into that, so you kind of need maybe like, I guess like 11 corpses to make that work. I don't think that's ever really happening by turn 5, especially if you know you're spending 3 mana on the egg for one of those first 4 turns. There's no way you're going to get that many corpses that early outside of they print some insane like gain, you know, 5 corpses card for 1 mana or something. That could maybe do it. Probably more realistically, maybe turn 6, 7 is probably where I would guess that would land often. I don't think a 20/20 by turn 7 is enough to be compelling. No taunt again, no rush. So it's just going to be a big dumb body that kind of sits there. So that is like maybe best case scenario I could imagine. All kinds of other decks are going to have to work on this forever. Maybe an egg deck that's just valuing eggs anyway could do something here, but the other eggs have like immediate payoffs. That's why they're good. You get that Nerubian quickly, and that 4/4 is awesome. This is such a delayed payoff. I thought about like Quest Druid. You know, this is just like a body on board to help keep your board full. That deck feels like it could win faster and better by just leaning into the wide board stuff. What does the 20/20 actually add when you just rather have a better 3-drop in your deck? So I don't know, man. Every way I try to break this down, it just feels slow. It feels awkward. The payoff, not even that good as far as I'm concerned. Like 20/20s just don't compete. Even if it was a 30/30, honestly, it might have the same kind of problem. I kind of wish this was like 3 steps that made a 10/10. I don't know that that would even be better necessarily, but it would at least feel more doable. Like it would feel like you could actually try for it. This is just like so much work. I don't even know. I like me building a deck to do this just for fun feels like a pain a little bit. I'm just not sure where to go on this one. So ultimately, also I was going to talk about like death rattle synergies. You know, like this could be cool if, you know, like your Umbra always got you a 20/20, but because each of these subsequent eggs is also going to have a death rattle, like it's going to pollute your death rattle pool. So you can't even do stuff like Umbra necessarily. You might get like 1 20/20 and a bunch of the other eggs, but again, that's even more work to delete those future eggs. So, you know, it's like even the like cool payoffs later don't really make sense from a death rattle standpoint either, as far as I can tell. So I don't know, at the end of the day, it just seems really awkward and not rewarding enough, and therefore to me probably a card that doesn't get played. Yeah, moving on to our next neutral legendary, it's Beast Speaker Taka. A 7-mana 2/2 with Battlecry, discover a legendary beast from any class to gain its stats, and then Death Rattle summon it. So the idea here is, you know, discover an awesome big beast, gain like 8/8 or whatever. You got a 7-mana 10/10, and then Death Rattle, that's going to summon an 8/8. And there are definitely some beasts that are great on board. You know, there's all the wild gods basically from Emerald Nightmares. You know, like you get an Omen, you know, you get this awesome like rush beast or whatever that could be really cool off the back of your Taka, and you get a ton of stats up front as well, and that could be kind of a home run result. The problem is, and this is actually captured really well in the GIF that they show you here in the reveal blog, which this GIF blows my mind for a variety of reasons. We're going to talk about this, right? So in this GIF, right, you play Taka, and this is what the average result's going to look like. You're going to get a bunch of beasts that are kind of garbage, and you're going to take the one with the slightly best stats, and you're going to get an 8/8 that summons a 6/6 for 7 mana, which, I mean, maybe that's like fine in Arena or whatever, although probably not, because this would not want to be your legendary in Arena. But it's just not a good 7 mana play. Like for 7 mana, that is just not competitive, particularly with the current day version of King Crush that can't even have rush or anything. So like, that's what you're going to see a lot of the times you play this card. Sometimes it'll be awesome in a home run. I argue those results are still just kind of okay for 7 mana. Like getting an Omen is still kind of okay because you're just like playing a dead 7-drop on board that's not doing anything until it dies. That's still kind of bad. Like the ceiling for me is like, the best case scenario is like a 3-star play. The average result is so much worse. But beyond that, why is this the promotional GIF if you're trying to sell a mini set? Number one, like, why are we using GIFs in the year of our Lord Yogg 2025, right? Like, I don't understand that. Like, this looks so scuffed. Surely there's a better way to do this. I don't know, maybe not. But beyond that, like, couldn't they have ran this a few times to have a cool result that you got like 3 awesome wild gods or something? Did they just run this once and take the first result and decide, hey, this is how we're going to sell our mini sets? I don't know. That blows my mind a little bit. Whatever, for like the big like marquee legendary card with a GIF, you'd think they could have got a cooler result to show it off. But maybe they wanted to show you the reality, which is that this card's usually going to suck, and like most of the results are bad. I did want to like pull up the legendary beast pool because I do think it's like okay. Like I want to be clear, like there's gonna be moments where you get some pretty cool results out of this. In a vacuum, I think that's interesting. The problem is, you know, on average, you know, any one game doesn't matter. It's your average results over time, and the fact that, you know, you got to run this in your deck and it could be something else. So like, you know, there will be instances where you get offered like Omen and Onara and Krog Crater King or something, and you're like, oh dude, these all have awesome big stats and they have cool effects. Once I resummon the minion, I'm really pumped. Those will happen sometimes. Other times you'll get like a Gamagon and I don't know, like Ashamain and Ursul, and you'll be like, okay, I got big stats, but the effects suck. Like I didn't get any actual useful effects out of this, you know, and that'll make you kind of sad. So, you know, even sometimes when you get stats, you'll still be sad. Other times you're going to get offered like, you know, just absolute garbage. You're going to get like Kwanzu, Rin Feral, and Archaios, and both the stats and the bodies suck. And you're like, oh no, what have I done? I've spent 7 mana for a piloted shredder, like legit, basically a piloted shredder, maybe a piloted sky golem, I guess. And that's really bad. And I just don't think you can tolerate those low rolls. It's too hard to run a card like this in a deck when those are the potential outcomes. The 1 in 10 games where it does something cool, the 9 out of 10 does not outweigh the 9 out of 10 where it's just completely dead. So as far as a card that's actually making a cut in a deck list, I just don't see that happening. I think this is way too weak. 5 mana, I'd be excited. 6 mana, I'd be like, okay, maybe. 7 mana, it's just too far gone. It's just not possible. Would 5 mana be broken? Yeah, maybe. Another alternative that could make this card cooler is if it said, discover a legendary beast from any class and gain its stats. Because right now, as you notice in that GIF, you don't get the beast in hand. The discover is interrupted and shuffled into the stats instead, as opposed to actually also keeping the discover. That would at least give you like a value piece to this as well, so it did multiple things. And then those battle cries that would otherwise suck, like a King Crush, like an Ashamain, would suddenly become really valuable, and you might be able to use this as a value card as opposed to just a kind of stat card, which it so often is going to be. So that could have pushed this to another level as well. Suddenly, some more late game classes could probably find a way to use this well. So as it stands, though, I just don't understand at all what this is supposed to do, who wants to play this, why this exists, or why you'd get excited about it based on that scuffed GIF in the reveal blog. This to me is just emblematic of like so many problems right now in Hearthstone, and it makes me super frustrated, and I'm curious if I'm alone in that fact, or if you guys actually think this card is the nuts. All right, so next up here is Mirx the Crystalline, a new 3/3/3 elemental beast that reads, while in your hand, this is a 3/3 copy of the last minion that your opponent played, which I don't know, I think this is kind of fun, and the fact that it's cheap is pretty nice. You know, you can obviously imagine some big crazy results off this where your opponent plays a big key thing that you care more about the effect than the stats, and this just becomes that nice cheap copy that says, ha ha ha, I can do what you do, but way cheaper. And then, you know, maybe it's an awesome battle cry or something, and then you can, you know, shadow step it and do it again. It wouldn't have the same, you know, it would reset back to its original cost, but you know what I mean? You could basically cheese out multiple battle cries, start doing what your opponent's deck does better. That's also got some like Thief Rogue implications, or, you know, stuff like a Test Greymane. You know, you've played a card from their class, assuming they're not a rogue, it's not neutral, and, you know, maybe you got some cool test stuff. Like, I'm really excited to try this out in a Thief deck. Now, the question, though, is, like, does this actually see play in competitive rogue decks as they exist today? I don't think so. I think most of those decks are a little bit more self-directed. They have their own game plans. They're trying to execute their own things to do, and just using a spot in deck and in hand very often to maybe get a cool pop-off from your opponent won't be worth it when you could just have a card that's more reliably moving towards your game plan instead. You know, they want to dictate the game, not kind of react to the game very often as rogues. And this is definitely one that's kind of more reacting to what's in front of you, which is probably not going to see as much play. You know, that's not even just true of rogue decks today. That's kind of historically been true for rogue, I think. And that is going to make this a hard sell for me in a class that just has that strong precedence of just not needing cards like this. This is something I might expect to see better utilized in maybe like a priest, for instance, that has often a little more space to run something like this, where they're okay dedicating a little bit of their deck and time to cards that can make some big silly plays like this, and kind of weave into a more defensive and control based game plan, very often a reactive game plan. So I don't know, man. Like, I think this card's fine. I wouldn't be shocked if people just toss it in as a one of here and there in certain metas in particular, where it has some like really key targets. So not as bad as the other two legendaries as far as I'm concerned. Like, I think it has a use case. It could have some moments, but I don't think it's a standout in its class necessarily. And I think there will still be a lot of games where it just felt like this sat in hand and basically did nothing the whole game, because it's very often just going to be a random card that you just, you know, a random 3-drop neutral, a random 4-drop neutral, and a 5-drop, and it's just not going to feel like it has all that much upside. So totally fine. The best of the cards we've seen so far, but still nothing super powerful or maybe even that exciting or crazy. All right, moving on to a new Hunter card. It seems like these Mask cards might be a little cycle in the mini set based on the fact they were featured in the blog, but this one is an 8-mana spell, Devilsaur Mask. Set a minion stats to 8/8 and give it charge, which we all know charge can be a pretty scary keyword, but this card has a couple safety valves basically built in. Number one, it's 8 mana, which is very expensive, and of course these stats are also set to 8/8 here as well. So both of those are probably going to limit any of the kind of scariness of this card, but at the same time also probably limit the power level or impact of this card as well. I think it's actually going to be really tough to use this effectively. I mean, there are ways to kind of work around that 8/8, you know, stuff like Wind Fury, I guess, most obviously, could suddenly, you know, now it's 16 damage instead of just 8. Also, any kind of stats applied afterwards if you played this first and then threw out some cheap bananas or something, or or whatever could make that even scarier. Discounts, obviously, is another way to do it. I don't know if Hunter historically is great at doing any of those super well not a class. Generally known for Wind Fury, but we do have some like little adapt cards and so on that could maybe get Hunter there. I think some neutral stuff as well, but nothing that jumped out at me as like particularly useful for otherwise an 8-mana spell. One card I did think was kind of interesting was maybe Adaptive Amalgam, because he would keep that 8/8 in charge, and then like every time you drew an Adaptive Amalgam, maybe you could just run 8/8 to face. Like that's what I want to do because it sounds fun. Like maybe that'd be a cool video. Is that going to be good? No, I don't think so. It's too hard probably to make all that happen, you know, post turn 8 or whatever. It might just be too late, and you know, even drawing one of those every turn or multiples every turn, I don't know if it'd be worth it or not. There might be some really cheesy thing, but it sounds more like a meme than anything consistent, right? So is there any like good ways to cheat this spell out in Hunter? I didn't really notice anything in Hunter as far as like big spell discounts, anything like that. This almost feels like a card that's going to be more important in its existence to other random generation effects, Yogg style effects, whatever, right? Where this just gets spit out and makes a funny impact. As far as a deck using this successfully in a constructed format, I don't know, man. I don't see it. I think the cost is too high. The stat is too limited, which, you know, maybe good news. I'm not sure we'd want this to be a powerful card, but still not a saving grace here for the mini set so far as impact is concerned. All right, next up is the Crater Experiment, and this card's actually kind of cool, I think. 5 mana, 3/4, all types. It is an amalgam card. With Kindred, summon a copy of this, which based on how Kindred works with multi-types, I'm under the assumption that you don't have to play an amalgam to activate this Kindred. Any minion type played the previous turn should activate this Kindred and therefore get you 2, 3, 4 bodies on board. Now, to be very clear, that is bad. At a base level, that is just not good enough. Like 2, 3, 4s sucks. But I do think one particularly specific home for this could be really cool, which is Quest Shaman. Because in Quest Shaman, you are basically, if you know, once your quest is done and you're getting those adapts, then basically they are 3/4s that have upsides. You know, some kind of buffs from the adapts from the quest reward. And then, you know, if you're getting a 3/4 with like Divine Shield and +1/+1, then the Crater Experiment becomes a little bit more interesting. I think that's still not insane, I guess. Still not crazy, maybe, but like better. And there's some interesting applications there, particularly if you go for like silly Shutterwalk plays. There are also, of course, other ways to just like hand buff this and stuff. We've seen a lot of hand buff copying manipulations as well, where, you know, if you just get an extra 8/8 on this or something, then you get 2, you know, 11 12s on board for 5 mana. That could also be a really interesting application. Basically, we know copying effects can do broken things. We know amalgams can actually do some pretty silly things as well. There's also just the applications of this activating other kindred things really consistently for decks that care about that. Decks that care about minion types like Shaman Quest. This is a great enabler. So there are a few things intersecting on this card that are all intriguing hooks for it to find some play. Is Quest Shaman going to suddenly rocket to the top of the ladder because of this? No, I don't think so. Could it be a useful and fun tool in that deck? Yes. So like that doesn't necessarily make this a good card inherently, but I like that it's a home right away where, you know, maybe this is kind of a high tier 3 thing. You could see that right away. And then in the future or with any hand buff stuff, you kind of keep an eye on this one, right? So a promising card. I don't think nuts, obviously, but promising. It has some angles where this might actually be decent, which we can't say about most of the cards so far in the video. So at this point, I'll take it. Next up here is the Holy Eggbearer, a 2 mana 1/2. With Battlecry, draw a 0 attack minion. So this, I guess, is support for the Egg of Kaos. You really want to make sure you find your egg on turn 3 to get things started. The Holy Eggbearer could tutor it out of the deck for you. That's not a reason to run this, because I don't think Egg of Kaos is a card we really want to run. There are obviously other eggs and other 0 attack cards as well, where you might care about the Holy Eggbearer, tutoring it out of your deck. I mean, I can pull up all the 0 attack stuff right now. Nothing exciting, right? It's literally just a lot of eggs. No like crazy win conditions or anything. Whispering Stone, the AFK, I don't think are it. Skyscreamer Eggs is like maybe the best looking card here. So like, is this possible in a Quest Druid build? Maybe, but I think there's probably just better stuff to do probably as well. Better card draw options, better ways to fill the board earlier or more consistently. So like, I never want to totally write off a 2-cost card draw tutor, because as soon as a 0-cost card gets printed that's like really good and it's a win condition, okay, maybe this is worth it, right? That said, that's an extremely unlikely outcome on average. We just don't have a lot of 0-cost cards that are super meta impactful. I think there's been a few things that are kind of cool, like Wishing Well or something. Nothing comes to mind, right? But there's probably some examples. So it's like, you don't want to totally shut it down, but at the same time, pretty unlikely card to ever be good. Certainly not something I see jumping out right now as a playable card. So probably just average at best, and probably realistically, most likely quickly forgotten. All right, so moving on to our final card here. It is the Herbivore Assistant. Is this the one that's going to save today's reveals? I don't think so. It's okay, maybe. 3 mana, 3/2 with Battle Cry. Give a friendly beast +2/+2 and Rush. And, you know, if I step back and like think about this in old school Hearthstone goggles, this actually looks kind of good, right? It's 5/4 in total stats. It's like got some rush, so there's like some immediacy there. The +2/+2 kind of has charge because you can put it into play right away, especially with that rush aspect, you know. So like, you're like, okay, maybe not the worst. And I'm like, part of me still kind of thinks even today, maybe not the worst. I could see like, you know, having an important beast go down on turn 2. And then when it sticks, you know, like this really stabilizes that, helps, you know, really make that thing sticky and annoying. And maybe those stats matter for some other reason. It has some scaling effect or whatever. That's kind of cool. And then, you know, maybe the rush is less about the on curve aspect, because it doesn't really make sense on curve, because that minion, if there's something that's stuck before, would already be able to attack anyway. So maybe the rush is to like help it later, so that if you play this on turn 6 or something, you still feel like it's making an impact. And then, you know, it's kind of okay on curve, kind of okay on turn 6. You know, I'm intrigued. The problem is really like opportunity cost for me. It's that like, yeah, I could see that being okay, but like, aren't decks just going to want to run better 3-drops? Aren't they going to want to run some awesome beast or some like really synergistic thing that's way better for their overall game plan, as opposed to just kind of a stat-based neutral 3-drop? Like, can there be an aggressive enough package that's consistently enough using these stats to really like hammer people that it's worth it? Or are there other just really good aggressive 3-drops you'd rather play instead? And that's kind of where I land on this. Like, I think, you know, if you just like showed people turn 3s and said, hey, I can magically generate this Herbivore Assistant for you and let you play it, and like a lot of people would say, oh yeah, that's pretty good right now. I would take that right now. That's actually a cool play. But when you ask them to put it in their deck list and take out a different 3-drop, I think that's where they go, yeah, I'd rather have other 3s. You know, it's one of those, just doesn't quite make the cut. And, you know, maybe not ultimately all that exciting. Maybe a cool arena card, but perhaps beasts aren't consistent enough on turn 2 in arena either. Although the rush, again, kind of nice later. So I don't know, man, like not the worst neutral card I've ever seen, but at the same time, when I think about, you know, like Murloc Paladins, what they're doing on turn 3 or 4 or whatever, is like, is this really worth it? Still not quite strong enough. All right, so that wraps it up for the day 1 reveals. Let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Egg of Kaos is a 1-star card. Speaker Taka is a 1-star card. Mirx the Crystalline is a 3-star card. Devilsaur Mask is a 2-star card. Crater Experiment is a 3-star card. Holy Eggbearer is a 2-star card. Herbivore Assistant is a 2-star card. 3 stars is our peak today, guys. Boy, I'm curious what you all think about these cards. This is not what I was hoping for from the mini set. It is going to be hard to make some fun decks out of these, but we're going to try our best anyway. We're going to try our best, but man, I thought we'd see a shakeup. I thought they were really saying, hey, we're not going to really shake up the meta before the mini set, because the mini set's going to come along and just punch us. It's going to be so crazy and fun and cool. Maybe there's going to be more cards in the future reveals that get us to that stage, but based on these first 3 legendaries, nothing's really blowing my mind just yet. So I don't know, share your thoughts down below. What do you think about this mini set? Are you excited to play these cards? They're going to be way better than I think. I'm curious to hear those thoughts and more. Thanks so much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.